Welcome, everybody. Chris Scott here in my series of interviews with the Warriors of Wrestling roster. And I also had Joey B last time. Now we're joined by Chris the Man Romano. What is up, my friend?
Nothing much. How are you? I appreciate you having me.
Oh, my God. I appreciate you being here and spending some time with me. I'm going to get to learn more about you, the character, and how Chris Romano, the Man, came about.
Sounds good to me.
That's my first question. How did you come up with the Man?
I actually did not come up with that name. It's a funny story. I'll try to make it as short as possible.
It's a podcast. You can go as long as you want with this. Be as descriptive.
That's great. Okay, so one day I was, I believe, finishing up my day at work, and my phone rang, and it was Johnny Rods, who was my original wrestling coach / trainer, whatever, and he asked me if I was coming to Gleason's that day, and I told him I actually wasn't planning on it. I was planning on doing 2 days towards the end of the week, because Johnny had multiple days that you were able to go and train. And his response was, "Oh shit," something like that. Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Shit. Okay.
You're good.
And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" And he goes, "I left my keys in the house that have the house keys on them." So I said, "All right. So how about this? Just because I wasn't planning on coming doesn't mean I can't go help you. Let me go get your keys for you and bring them to you so you can get home later." And he was like, "Okay, great, thank you." And he had told that story to a couple of the guys later on that night. "Oh, like, you guys know Chris Romano, right?" Because I was only there for a short period of time at that point. And apparently their response was, "Oh, yeah, Chris, he's the man. He's hilarious. He's a good guy. Chris is the man. Chris is the man." And the next time I went in there, Johnny Rods was like, "How about Chris the Man Romano?" And I said, "I kind of like the way that sounds." So I just went from there. I never changed it after that.
I guess no one can really complain about being the man.
No, I guess not, right?
So how long have you been wrestling now?
I started training in 2006. I think I had my first match towards the very end of that year. So we do the math. That's about 12 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Solid time. So you came from Gleason's.
I did.
I know Joey came from there as well.
Yes, he did.
He had a lot to say about Gleason's in the past. It's part of the history of Warriors. A lot of guys came from there.
Yeah.
What it was your opinion about Gleason's, the training you got there, and then the crossover to Warriors?
Well, I will say this. The training that you do get at Gleason's, in terms of the basics and the fundamentals of wrestling, there, at least when I was there was really no better place on the East Coast, or in the tri-state area, because Johnny Rods taught you how to, take a bump properly, protect yourself, protect the person that you're working with, and just a lot of different things that I don't think a guy who made their living in wrestling as long as Johnny Rods did would be able to teach you. And the training was hard too, and that was a good thing about it. There was a few guys there that had been there for a long time, and that if they saw you do something wrong, they wouldn't just be like, we'll get it the next time. That they would make you do it over and over and over again, to the point where you were like, I don't even know if I can get up. Some people might look at that as like, oh, that's abusive or whatever, but no, like, it's not. It makes you, way better at what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And for a long time, that's really all I did was, take a roll, take a bump, take a roll, take a bump, hit the ropes, take a bump, hit the ropes, take a bump. And, I can honestly say, taking a regular, flat back bump, I've never hit my head. I've never, hurt myself, thank God, none of that stuff. And I attribute all that to the training at Gleason's.
Mm-hmm. Now, with Warriors, I see you oftentimes at the student shows, always playing like a veteran role. Usually you're the heel character for the up-and-coming guys. Is that voluntary time? Do you just choose to do that?
Absolutely. Because I'll never forget the handful of guys, Joey B was actually one of them, who had experience when I was at Gleason's and I was very new, and they did take the time to pull me aside and say, "Hey, let's do this, or let's do that, or let's have a match." And I'll never ever forget that. So it's kind of embedded in me to do the same thing. I don't want to see anything but the best for the younger guys at Warriors of Wrestling, and if I could help them even with just the slightest thing, then that, I'm all for that, whether it's, something small as, just selling something, or reacting to something, or, just, lock up more aggressive, something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm all for that, because I don't want to see anything but the best for anybody.
I respect the hell out of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Being around for the younger guys. Now, Joey had mentioned that in the beginning. I recently rewatched the documentary, the Warriors documentary. He called in the very beginning Warriors wrestling the misfits of wrestling, the Warriors, because they were kind of like the outcasts.
Okay.
You know? And you were there from the very beginning, correct?
No, actually, I wasn't. You're probably mistaken the fact that right before Joey had left Gleason's, I was in a faction with Joey.
Okay.
That might be where the confusion lies, because
Okay.
I know that's in the documentary as well. But I did not wrestle for Warriors of Wrestling at the very beginning stages. No, but I knew about it. I was very, I was obviously very into it. I knew about it. I had gone to like the first like 2 or 3 shows. I sat like ringside for like the very, very first show. I think Joey might have needed a bell guy.
Okay.
Something to that effect. And I thought it was great. I knew that he was going to do good with it after the first show.
How long have you been wrestling with Warriors then?
I started wrestling full time at Warriors in 2016.
Okay.
I actually, believe it or not, was gonna wrap up my time in wrestling. I've only told a few people this, so this might be interesting to a lot of people.
Okay.
Because it was basically like I had like gone to TV a couple times with WWE. I had a couple of tryouts with some other companies where like you could actually like get yourself out there, or I dare say even make a living at this. And I didn't get a call back or anything like that, which is fine. I was just happy to even receive that opportunity, because how many people go through wrestling their whole entire career and never even get to do something like that? And I had just had a hernia operation. There was something else wrong with me at the time. I think it was my collarbone. I broke my collarbone. So I was like, I'll just go and train just to stay in shape. So I went to the Warriors of Wrestling school, and I was just training. Just happy to see, Joey and a couple of the other guys that I knew, and training. And Joey asked me if I wanted to wrestle one night, and it just relit everything back
That's
up
awesome.
again. And I was like, oh my God, I'm having a great time all over again. And here I am.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's so great. I did not know that. Okay. That's what podcasts are for.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
learning new things.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So 2016,
Yeah.
you started wrestling. That's when you started wrestling full time at Warriors.
Yes.
Along the way, you have had been a tag team with Justin Adams. Unfortunately, he has his injury. He's battling back from that.
That's true.
He's anxious to get back in the ring.
Oh,
what do you
believe
see?
me, I know.
What are some of your thoughts on like the younger guys, including like Justin Adams at a part of Warriors?
I think, guys like Justin Adams are a great addition to the Warriors roster, because he has so much talent. The first thing I noticed about him is that the way he bumped and the way he was aggressive when he locked up and stuff like that. And right off the bat, I just kind of like, forced my focus on him, not like to teach him or anything like that, just when he would actually do stuff, like I would look right at him, and I'd be like, oh, all right.
So he shows up at the training center one day.
Yep.
All right, and a series of time you see him, then you kind of got focused on working with him. And how the idea of you guys being a tag team go about?
Joey told me that something to the effect of like that he didn't have a lot of tag teams.
Okay.
And I was still at the time being used, as a singles role. Like if Joey needed me to do one thing or the other, whatever it was, multi-man matches, whatever. Happy to be there. But I said to him, you know what? I said, you need a tag team. I said, I don't know if you want. Obviously, everything's up to you. But he's old school. I'm old school. He wears a vest. I wear a vest. I was like, get us a pair of sunglasses and we could be a tag team. And I guess he just did it, a few times to test the waters, and here we are. And as time went on, matching vests, matching gear, kind of yin yang type of gear, just whatever we could do to look and conduct ourselves like a tag team.
Mm-hmm. A growing part about the tag team, Midnight Classics.
Yes.
The book, the rule book.
Yeah.
How'd you guys come up with that?
That was proposed to us by Logan Black, and then like just as like an idea, and then Justin kind of just like catapulted on it. He was like, we can get a book and we can come out and say this, and this is in the rule book and this is not in the rule book. And I was like, that's just fantastic. And he was like, let's use the charisma that you bring out to do that, and then I could do a little bit and you could do a little bit, and I was like, it's perfect. I was like, that's
it really is.
Yeah, no problem at all.
It really does bring like an extra thing to your tag team. Like you guys, obviously you have the characters that you portray, but adding that little element to it, I enjoy it. Just like as a commentator, I'm also a fan because I get to see everything that's going down. And I was putting on Twitter promoting all the matches. I was like, oh, well, he's always coming up with something to give himself the advantage at the end. What rules are going to come up with next? So
yeah, right.
It's just something to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't be happier. I was like, we have this thing going on, and and we have a book. I was like, this is just fantastic.
So as far as getting some, TV time, WWE TV time, or like tryouts and things like that.
Yeah.
Right. What do you think are some of the things that you did that led to that?
Well, number one, just constantly annoyed them, if that makes sense. I don't really know for a fact if it annoyed anybody, but I know that when I was like ready, like when I thought that I was like decent enough to at least just show them what it is that I had to bring to the table, it was every 6 months updating the little page that they had at the time on their website. It was like a www.recruit.com.
Really?
Trying to get contacts of people that worked there, which I was able to do, sending them stuff. And like I would have a new photo every 6 months, a new match every 6 months, a new promo every 6 months, and just doing it until I thought that like, okay, they really just don't have any interest whatsoever. And one day it was actually on my birthday, believe it or not. It was my birthday of 2014. I was driving home from work and my phone rang and it said Stamford, Connecticut on it. This was when they actually called you instead of emailing you like they do now. And they were like, oh, would you be interested in coming to Brooklyn for Raw this Monday and Boston for SmackDown? And I was like, of course. And it was I don't know if you remember, but it was the week before WrestleMania.
Okay.
They did the segment on Raw at the very end with Taker and Lesnar, and Taker clotheslined Lesnar over the rope and his head hit the casket.
Okay.
Because Brock Lesnar originally opened up the casket, there was nobody in it, and then Undertaker was eventually in it. They used us to be druids that night. The next night they didn't have any segment for us, but we did do like stuff, during the afternoon, and it was great. It was one of those things where like it's an eye opener, but at the same time you're just happy to be there. You're like, oh, do I walk a certain way? Do I not? It was very nerve wracking, but it was also one of those things that like I'll never forget. I tell people a lot this all the time. I can't remember like what I did probably like 5 minutes ago, but if you asked me to tell you like every single thing that happened in those days, I could tell you.
How could you forget?
Yeah,
how could you possibly
forget that? You grow up as a lifetime fan, and then you're like there, and you're just like, oh my god.
So, you said you were a druid.
Yes.
Were you a druid during an Undertaker entrance? Or was it like a little segment where you were?
It was a segment where we we walked an empty casket down to the ring.
Okay, still cool.
We weren't like when Ambrose held up the large stick of fire and Undertaker walked underneath it. Not that type of entrance, but he was there that whole day, and he did converse with us quite a lot, which was awesome. Because you would think like, oh, the Undertaker, he's just gonna go about his business as a professional. And no, like he was like, hey guys, what's up? You guys are helping out tonight? Awesome. Shook all of our hands and just a complete professional. It was just fantastic. Same thing with Triple H. He actually directed the segment.
Oh,
and
really?
One of the first things he said was, hey guys, thank you. And we're like, what? Thank us? We're like, no, thank you. But it just goes to show you that these guys are 100% top-notch professionals.
Interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
He kind of like humanizes these guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Were there any other familiar faces that were druids that day that you saw?
I knew a couple of the guys, but nobody that I believe has ever worked for Warriors. I think one of the guys did one show for them maybe at one point. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, no, actually, wait a minute. I'm wrong. One of them was Steve Pena. Steve Pena just recently did the King of New York tournament at Warriors Wrestling about 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah. So, he's one of them. One guy that I was a original Gleason's guy. Well, not original, but he came there like maybe about 2 years after me. And, that's it with the WWE part of it.
As far as like top wrestling moments throughout your entire career, I mean, obviously that's going to play a huge factor. But
oh, sure.
Besides that, what are some that come to mind of like top moments of your wrestling career?
The very first time I worked a match for Warriors of Wrestling, just because of the simple fact that like everybody was like happy that I was there, type of thing, and I got nice feedback from it. And I also think that if it wasn't good, that I wouldn't be sitting here with you. I'm not saying like, oh, 5-star WrestleMania, but like if it was, if it wasn't something that Joey and the powers that be were at least happy with, I wouldn't be sitting here. And that to me is like the ultimate thing. A few times that I wrestled and maybe was given a title by a promotion was obviously always a very nice thing. But I'll be perfectly honest with you. My time at Warriors of Wrestling so far has absolutely been the funnest and happiest times I've had.
Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
Why do you think that is?
Because everybody is so like down to earth. Nobody has an ego, and everybody's willing to help everybody. Nobody nobody snickers at anybody, or I should say like make fun of them or bury them behind their back if like they, let's say, blow a spot or have a bad match or just acts like like a little like weird or a goof. Like everybody, everybody's supportive of everybody. Like they'll pull you aside and be like, hey, this could be better, or like I liked what you did here. Even somebody like me, as long as I've been wrestling, you'll get somebody with like, let's say 6 or 7 years, and they might have saw something that I did, and they'll be like, oh, you might want to put a little bit more oomph into that one, and that's great. You want that, because then you just become complacent, and then maybe your performance might not be as good as it was the last time, and you don't want to do that. If you work steadily for a promotion that's good to you, you want to be just as good to it back.
How many would you say different promotions were you as committed to as Warriors throughout your past career? Well, in your career?
Probably just 2, to be honest with you. I don't even know if you would want to call Johnny Rodz' promotion a promotion, because mostly what he does is student shows. But he does have a name to it. He calls it the World of Unpredictable Wrestling, so I guess that one. Just because I wrestled there for a long time. And there was another promotion out in New Jersey that a gentleman by the name of Mike Morgan ran and still does run. And he appreciated me, and just as like I appreciated him. And I would work for him quite a bit, especially in like 2014 and 2015, and so really those 2 are the 2 that come to mind.
So right now you're just at Warriors, anywhere else? Just Warriors?
Just as Warriors. That's really the only place I want to work for, to be perfectly honest with you.
How long do you expect to continue wrestling for?
I say this all the time. When I feel like my performance is not as good as it was due to, I don't know, maybe, time wrestling, or maybe because my head isn't into it or whatever, that's when I'll just respectfully say, I'm doing this for a good reason. You know what I mean? Because I dare me to bring your, promotion down in any sort of way. I don't really see anything happening anytime soon, but
good.
Like
that was
I
the
said,
next question I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon, but at the same time, you have to be realistic with yourself. Time, is everybody's enemy in any form of athletics, I feel, and wrestling is no different. I remember being very young, like maybe like 23 years old or whatever it was when I first started, and seeing a guy in the locker room and he was like 40 something. Not that he was bad, but I just remember saying to myself, like, oh, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like 44 and having these young guys thinking like, what's this old guy doing here? Does he still think he's going to like make it or something like that? So like I always had that in the back of my head,
But, I feel like Warriors makes everyone comfortable with, who they are, how old they are, what they're doing. Even the crowd, too. They love it.
Yeah, they do. That's another thing. I've never seen such a diehard audience, because the other 2 places that I worked for, like I said, one place was just strictly like the friends and family of the wrestlers would show up, but the other place that I mentioned, too, they didn't have like that core group of fans like Warriors has. I mean, you were in Brooklyn on Saturday. I mean, it just gets more and more packed in there every single time we go, and you see the familiar faces that they're there all the time, just like in Staten Island.
Yeah,
they're there all the time, and you couldn't ask for more.
That's true. Warriors,
and they'll tell you too. On top of it, they'll you'll know if they disapprove. New York is unforgiving, which is good. It keeps you on your toes.
It's cool looking at the documentary that showed the first 5 years, and it showed like some taping and some video footage of the previous shows they put together, and the crowd looked alive, but the crowd wasn't as packed as it is now.
Yeah,
the crowd's really packed now.
They are very packed now.
And it's a lot of fun. It's crazy how it has a consistent draw.
Yep,
it's always bringing in people. It's so great.
It is.
Now let's talk about how you were influenced to become a wrestler and growing up, I guess, getting into wrestling. Who were some of your favorite wrestlers growing up?
Growing up, Shawn Michaels.
Mm-hmm.
I think almost everybody's favorite wrestler at some point is Shawn Michaels. I liked Shawn Michaels from the time I was very, very young. Obviously, he was in the Rockers when I was very young, and then he did the turn, and I was still very young, and I just followed his career all the way through. Bret Hart I liked, but I tend to favor heel Bret Hart a little bit more than the babyface Bret Hart, especially like Hart Foundation in the 80s, and then again in the late 90s. It was fantastic when he was a heel. Love Steve Austin no matter what phase of his career. Triple H, same thing. I thought Triple H was awesome even when I was like 13 years old and he was Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I remember telling my friends, like, this guy will be like the Intercontinental Champion soon, like that, you know what I mean? Like that. Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect, amazing. These are guys that like I really like studied like a lot. And then when I got actually into wrestling, very smart man by the name of Matt Stryker, I'm sure you know who that is.
Oh yeah.
Told me try to look at guys who are somewhat similar to you, like maybe the same height, the same build, or maybe just if you pick a guy and say like I could work like him, study him. So now that went from me studying all the guys that I had just mentioned to like Bob Orton, Don Morocco, Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. I mean, these guys were huge, obviously. I'm not saying that I'm their size, but the wrestling style was something that when I looked at it, I was like, I could do that, and then the leadership that you saw in their matches as a guy who had been wrestling now at that point for probably about like 6 years, maybe even more, probably 8 years, you're like, oh, wow, like he's a ring general in there, you know what I mean? And it was just something that like, I just kept on studying more and more and more different guys, and also depending upon what it was that the promoter wanted me to do at the time, I would pull somebody different, like I hadn't watched tag team wrestling or studied tag team wrestling in like a while. Then when Joey wanted to do Justin and myself, I pulled out all my old tag team DVDs, all my Hart Foundation, all British Bulldogs, the Dream Team, Valentine and Beefcake, all these different teams that like they were like the heel teams of the 80s, you know what I mean? Not really the British Bulldogs, but the other two teams that I mentioned. The Hollywood Blondes going into like the 90s, heel tag team, like great stuff, like stuff that you can watch it and you're like, all right, this will get over. You know what I mean? Like it's so good.
Are there any like specific, let's see, specific characteristics or maneuvers or little things like that you've pulled away from these wrestlers that translate to your character now?
Yeah. Are you talking about like the actual physical moves?
Yeah, like a mixture of things, like the character that you are and like the maneuvers that you do.
Okay. Well, you know what? A lot of people have actually asked me something similar to that. Okay. And I always say that I patterned, I guess if you want to call it like the defense part of it, like the bumping and the selling and stuff like that, from Shawn Michaels.
Okay.
And the offense part of it of like a mixture of Bret Hart and Bob Orton. Like a lot of people see that I do like a backbreaker or I'll do like a sidewalk slam. Like those are Bret Hart, Bob Orton stuff. You know what I mean? Like, and like the way I try to take bumps off shoulder tackles and drop down. Like that's the way like Shawn Michaels used to do it. And Steve Austin too, actually, when Steve Austin was a heel in WCW. I don't know if you ever saw him drop down, but it's like it's vicious, like as if he's trying to like slam his body through the mat. Same thing with the way he hits the ropes. Steve Austin would attack the ropes. I don't run the ropes that much, but like if I'll slam a guy in the middle of the ring and hit the ropes, like drop an elbow on him, I'm turning myself into Steve Austin. As weird as that may sound,
I get it though.
I'm just like
you kind of get
the
that
rope.
character. Yeah. That makes total sense. What about today's products, today's wrestling product, like the stuff you see on TV and the internet? WWE obviously is the big mammoth, out there. You got Impact, Ring of Honor, New Japan, Lucha. You still watch all these different promotions?
I do. I watch WWE weekly, or I try to at least. Impact, yes and no. It's on a little bit later now. Sometimes I'm at work, sometimes I'm not. But I still have a grasp of what's going on. NXT is great because you could just, if you miss it on Wednesday, you could just click the button and watch it the next day or 2 days later. And I'm hugely high on Dolph Ziggler and Drew McIntyre. Seth Rollins. I think these guys are absolutely amazing. They're the it thing now, but I also feel that they're the future as well, if that makes sense.
Those three specifically?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, I understand that they're it right now, but, like, I'm talking about, like, even in, like, the next, like, 4 or 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if Drew McIntyre is the WWE champion within like the next 3 or 4 years. Elias too. I love Elias. Elias reminds me of someone that I would have saw on TV back in like the 1980s or early 90s, because he is a gimmick, as they say. He is in very good shape and he's a solid worker. You know what I mean? Like
charismatic too.
Yeah, absolutely. You know. So guys like that, 100%. EC3, when EC3 goes to the main roster, he'll be more than fantastic, just because from the moment I met EC3, I had saw him on TV already, but when I actually met him at a couple of shows for that gentleman that I spoke about before, I saw like firsthand like how he has like everything that it takes to be like a great professional wrestler. Like, he is charismatic, he has a second to none build, and his work is great. It's just, you know, he's a big dude and he clobbers you, and you know, he does some cool moves, and it's like, you know, what more could you possibly ask for? You know.
Do you watch Ring of Honor, New Japan at all?
I fell off a lot. I'll be honest with you. I fell off on Ring of Honor a lot in like 2013. This was around the time that Rhett Titus and wow, I forgot his name. He was the stripper character in TNA. They were a tag team.
Okay.
And they were the tag team champions. They had dropped the belts to, I think, the Briscoes. That was around the time that I stopped watching it.
The Briscoes have been there forever. Since the very first show that they had.
Yeah, I think the champion at the time in Ring of Honor was Kevin Owen, I think.
Kevin Steen,
Kevin Steen
I
at
think
the
Kevin
time.
Steen at the time, probably around there, because that was before he got signed.
Yeah, I did I did one of their 3-day like tryout camp things, and they invited me to the Manhattan Center when they had a show, just in case they needed somebody to like play security or whatever. They didn't end up needing anybody, but I was still there, and I believe that was the main event. I believe it was Kevin Steen against somebody else, and he was the champion. But again, it was one of those things that was great. I was just happy to be there. New Japan, no. I watch matches on YouTube. But to actually say that I watch like full shows, I don't. You know, I would like to, but it's just there's so much wrestling out there. It's like, how much time do you have in a day? You know.
I totally understand. Now you said you're a big Shawn Michaels fan.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
As a big Shawn Michaels fan, I always thought, I wonder how Shawn Michaels fans feel about the overuse of the super kick. The Young Bucks use it all the time.
Yeah.
Everyone in the Elite uses it. You see it in WWE too. Dolph Ziggler does the tuning up the van thing.
Yes, he does.
As a Shawn Michaels fan, how do you feel about the overusage of the super kick?
Okay. See, I have a little bit more of I guess a different perspective than most people, because this is what a lot of people don't know, or maybe they do know and they just fail to bring it up, is that Shawn Michaels did the super kick with Marty Jannetty. It was a double team move. They would do the super kick together, hit their tag team. They would usually powder out, and they would continue the match. Okay? When Shawn Michaels first became a singles wrestler, he would hit it as like a cutoff. Then he would do a move that was called a teardrop suplex, until Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, told him on the road one day, literally on the road in a car, you should start using the kick as your finish because it's awesome. Then it became his finish. Now, for all these other guys that use it, I just look at it and I say, well, these guys must love Shawn Michaels. But they use it a lot of times, and it doesn't end up being the finish, whereas if Shawn Michaels hit it, it was the finish. So to me, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
You know, Shawn Michaels hits the super kick, that's it, bro. You know, you know, 1, 2, 3, which is awesome. And I also think that it's a huge compliment to Shawn Michaels, too, because you know that these guys wouldn't be using it if they didn't watch Shawn Michaels. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't be a thing. And it just goes to show how many people were influenced by Shawn Michaels. It's probably, I dare say, more than thousands of people that wrestle now have been influenced by Shawn Michaels.
A lot of people say Shawn Michaels is the greatest of all time. If not that, he's top 5, top 3.
I believe he is. Oh, and I failed to mention Ric Flair before. Ric Flair was another guy. Studied him a lot. I have to say his name.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't believe I forgot.
He's the GOAT. He's
yeah,
up there.
He really is.
So when I was thinking about like the super kick being overused by like everyone, but that's a very good, you know,
analogy.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's a good analogy of it, and I never really thought about it that way. So you could tell that you're a real student of the craft,
yeah,
because of how descriptive you are with that, which I appreciate.
Right, thank
you. It's perfect
you.
for a podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
I also like how they're starting at least to protect the DDT, but the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I see the super kick being used by everyone, but when Shawn Michaels was wrestling all the time, the super kick wasn't used as much.
No.
But it's kind of like the usage of the DDT. Actually, everyone was using it at some point.
Yep.
It's just like, it's a cutoff move. That's all it is.
Yep.
So as far as guys like Dolph Ziggler,
Yeah.
Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, what is it about their game specifically that you think that everyone could learn from?
They embrace every single thing that they do, meaning like Dolph Ziggler has been a babyface, Dolph Ziggler has been a heel. No matter what role they give him, whether he's a singles or a tag, this guy goes out there and tears it like down. Like, I mean, like, I don't know if you have to actually wrestle to appreciate it as much, but like when I watch the guy wrestle, I'm just like, man, this guy is just got, like, he is it. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And like, he could wrestle forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's amazing. Like, I don't know if a lot of people realize, like, some of the things that these guys do after, like, 30 minutes into the match, like, you have to be in insane condition to do that. Like Seth Rollins, for example.
CrossFit Jesus.
Yeah. I actually have a friend, hey, Emilio. He actually coined that. I don't care what anybody says. He started calling Seth Rollins CrossFit Jesus on Twitter, and then it became a thing. He also knows people in WWE, and I think he might have mentioned that to them. CrossFit Jesus,
Amelia.
and they.
I know an Emilio who's really into wrestling. I don't personally know him, but I know of Emilio. I wonder if it's the same guy.
Definitely him. Emilio Sparks.
Yes.
Yep, that's him.
Yep.
I hope he listens to this. He does podcasts too.
Oh yeah.
I'm still waiting to be on, by the way, pal. Anyway, they like Seth Rollins does that thing where a guy does a crossbody onto him, he catches him and he rolls backwards, and then he picks him up and throws him over his shoulders, almost in like a hang clean position. And to do that, 30 minutes into a match, that's like, I can't even. I'm flabbergasted just thinking about it, because you might be out of wind, like it's just, I can't. It's one of those things that when I saw it, I was like, holy, you know what? It was like I couldn't believe it. Same thing with Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, he looks like if you were to construct a wrestler in a factory somewhere, Drew McIntyre would come out, and he's aggressive and he just owns every single thing he did. Thanks to Joey B, we were able to do a seminar this past weekend, and the gentleman Tyson Kidd works for WWE, and that was one of the things that he said. He was like aggression, and he said Drew McIntyre is aggressive. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, man, he is. And that's, and it's perfect for his character because he's supposed to be the Scottish psychopath, and what psychopath isn't aggressive when they're, giving it to somebody. And it's just, like I said, for the time that we're in right now in wrestling and how people want to see it, those two guys just, or the 3 or 4 guys, I should say, they just give everything the way you want to see it.
Let's transition back to Warriors now.
Sure.
I asked Joe during the interview with him, what guys do you see around now at Warriors, students that came up through Warriors, do you see that have like maybe the potential to really explode over the next few years? He mentioned a few names, and one of them he mentioned, if I remember correctly, it was Tony Booz.
Yep, absolutely.
Vinny Pacifico,
yep.
Chris Benet, Justin Adams.
Yep.
And of course, there's a whole list of young guys that are still trying to break through and make a name for themselves. They're new people are always coming into Warriors.
Yeah.
But those guys specifically, you've been in the ring with all of them.
Yeah.
What do you see in those guys individually? Like, what do they all have in common?
They all have that desire. I could just see it. It might take me a little bit, but I could see it. Like Tony Booz, for example, he just wants to get better and better and better, and every single time he gets in the ring, he does get better. Even like I'll just be sitting there like ready to go home, like putting my sneakers on, and he'll come up to me and ask me a question, and like right then and there, like it just goes to show you, like, oh my God, like this kid loves it, and he wants to get better and better and better and better. Chris Benet. We're talking about a kid who looks completely different now than he did when I first met him. Right off the bat, that just goes to show you the desire. Same thing. He was a single guy for a little bit. Now he's in a tag team, and his tag team work is awesome. He's got a great partner to go with because he has a lot of experience, and he's teaching him along the way too. But he's soaking it up like a sponge. Slade
Slade, you mentioned, too.
Slade is just like a sponge that wants to get that water in him, and it's like he doesn't want it to be squeezed out. He will go in the ring. He'll have his match. The first thing he'll do is he'll walk up to somebody, whoever it may be. How was it? What could I do different? What could I do better? What wrestling matches can I watch? For me. He actually asked me that question personally, and I sent him like 5 or 6 matches. And he actually, the next time I saw him, he described almost like each and every match and like what was in it that he liked. So that he actually watched it. Andros the Greek. Another guy, you could just tell, he wants to do this. You know what I mean?
Supposed to interview him too.
Yeah, he wants to do this. He cares about everything that he does, and he looks at it the way someone should look at it. Like he knows, okay, this is this and that's that. Honestly, all of them. I'll be honest with you. Marcus.
Marky.
Yeah, Mark. I wasn't. I was sorry. I was just thinking about the next guy. I don't know if he wants to consider himself a student anymore. I really don't know, but I know that he hasn't really been doing it as long as everybody else. Isaiah Wolf. Obviously, Justin. I spoke highly about him before. Same thing. I could just go on and on. I mean, if you name me guys, I could tell you that they all share that same thing, and they all have respect. They all try hard. They're all in the gym trying to, get better bodies. They're all practicing their promos. It's just great to see it. Same thing with Vinny Pacifico. I met him when he was maybe about like a year or so in, and like the difference is phenomenal between his in-ring work to even like you could always see he's got new gear, and he just cares, what I mean, like a lot. And that's
Kid's
really
20 years old.
Yeah, and that's really what it boils down to. Like, you have to care. Like, some people, they get discouraged quickly, or they only care about like the wrestling aspect of it. They won't practice promos, they won't go to the gym, they won't eat right, whatever the case may be, and that kind of gets a little disheartening a little bit. But the guys that I had just mentioned, and countless others that I probably forgot or just failed to mention, that's
a good thing for Warriors. Just so many of them. There's so many great.
They do all that. Like I mentioned before,
there.
like Chris Benet. I mean, like, looks completely different than the first time I met him. Oh, TK Luther, forget it. When I first met him, always a great guy. Don't get me wrong. And he was in the ring and he was learning and he was doing good. But there was like, he was hesitant about like certain things. And through Warriors of Wrestling, he was able to do a seminar with Matt Stryker, who is just a fountain of knowledge with everything that involves professional wrestling. Matt Stryker is. And he did the seminar with Matt Stryker. Matt Stryker told him maybe you could do this or do that. He did it, and look at him now. It's amazing. It's an actual amazing transition. I tell him all the time that he has timing and entertainment values in his work that he doesn't even know about, and I don't want to tell him, just because of the simple fact that I don't want him to be like, oh, wait, did I do it right or did I not do it right? That type of thing.
Don't think too much, just do it.
Yeah, exactly. And his thing is just phenomenal. It's so absolutely phenomenal.
TK Luther, the cookie pimp.
Yep, it's great.
The filling all the ladies need,
or
something like that. It's, on the cruise, I was with him, Frat Boy Farva, and then one of our other friends who's not in the wrestling world, but he just lives in Florida. TK had a notebook on him the entire time. Always had it, no matter where he was. It's actually, I don't know if you'd want me to tell you this.
No, please tell me.
It's in
I love TK Luther stories.
I don't know if you ever saw it, but he has the Hercules VHS, right? The Hercules VHS, but he has it as like a journal. It's like a book.
Like the Hercules, the Steve Reeves Hercules, or the
no, I'm talking like the one in the
Hercules?
90s, the Disney Hercules.
Oh, the cartoon,
okay, right in the 90s.
Okay,
so I see him. We meet up at the airport, and this is before the Jericho cruise we go on, of course. He comes up and he has this VHS tape. It looks like it.
Okay.
And I'm like, they have VHS on the plane or something? What is going on? He showed that it was a journal. But I'm telling you that the entire cruise, the entire vacation, looking at little things, he's always making notes, always writing things he could do with his character, rewriting the character. He's
a smart man.
He's always looking at it.
And then, that's what you have to do. You have to be like, how could I make this even better? And it just goes to show you, like, he's always coming out with like different stuff on. You know what I mean? And like that's another thing. Like, oh wow, like like look at him. He's taking the time out just to get like a new like jacket or a new pair of sunglasses. And then he got the tights with the Oreo cookie on the back of it. It was like, oh, forget it. Like this guy's got a world of potential.
He's going all in with it.
Yeah.
Oh man. So you would say the future for Warriors is pretty bright with all these young guys coming in.
Every single student that they have, I would not be surprised if I decided to stop by a show like another like 8 or 9 years from now, that those guys are like the the Chris Steelers and the Vinny Pacificos and the Sonny Kisses of the shows you see now. And it would be it would be awesome because like I said, they deserve it.
So cool. So we got the 11-year anniversary coming up. That's going to be next month. It's going to be a huge show. Are you on the card?
I believe so. I know that Joey's going to have the Frankie Getz Memorial Battle Royal. I believe that I will be participating in that. If not, something else. And that, it would be my honor to participate in that because Frankie Getz and I were very close. And I would love nothing more to, do that in his honor, basically.
Yeah, that was a very, very rough time. Hearing about the news, but Warriors did a great job. They did the memorial show.
Yes, they did.
I'm happy to hear that they're gonna be doing a memorial. Battle Royal. I did not know about that. That's actually phenomenal.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, it was one of those things where like it just makes you happy, And they're always good when it comes to stuff like that. It's very, very, very professional promotion, and I've worked for a lot of unprofessional promotions, believe me. And that's why I said I don't really want to work anywhere else, just because I see the difference, And I tell guys all the time that be like, oh, I want to go wrestle over in this place and that place. I go, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead. But, don't come back to me and be like, oh, man, you should have seen this because I know all about it already. You should have seen these guys like yelling at each other, or you should have seen the locker room was filthy, or the promoter wasn't even there when the show was supposed to start, like stuff like that. Like you have to treat it like it's a job. You know what I mean? And a lot of these promotions, they just tell you, go out there and do whatever you want. I don't care, Whereas with Joey and the people that work close to Joey, they tell you like what it is that they want from you. And that's how it should be. I give guys this analogy all the time. If they do something that Joey didn't tell them to do and Joey gets mad at them and they say, Joey got mad at me, I say, well, let me ask you a question. If you worked at McDonald's and your boss told you to make 10 fish fillets, would you go make 10 Big Macs? No, right? You would make 10 fish fillets. And they look at me, oh, yeah. Well, I mean, come on. You should know that already.
You've touched up on a lot of pieces of advice, and it's honestly been a fantastic interview. This has been great.
Thank you very much.
Are there any last-minute pieces of advice maybe you want to throw out there for guys who are interested in becoming wrestlers or guys who currently are wrestlers as an experienced veteran of the craft? Any little words of wisdom that you haven't mentioned yet?
Just go to a good wrestling school and take it as seriously as possible. If you want to get into it because you want to have fun or maybe be like, as they say, a weekend warrior, that's okay too. But you have to still take it as seriously as possible, you know what I mean? And if you're going to get into it, like when I got into it with the hopes of making a living at wrestling, no matter where it is that you may work, just as long as you can make as much money to, pay your bills and stuff like that, same thing. Everything has to be 100% committed to. You commit yourself to your ring work, your promos, and, the way you look, because obviously that has a lot to do with everything, and go to a good wrestling school, you know what I mean? And if you do come across guys that are in the business or make their living in the business, talk to them, pick their brains. Quick story, and I hope that this doesn't bury anybody because that's not what I'm trying to do, but I went up to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat on Saturday night and I asked him if he had watched my match. And he said, oh, I didn't because I was very busy and blah, 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 blah. He goes, but I'm very glad that you asked me that because I go to a lot of shows and nobody asks me what I thought of their match. And I was like, in my head, why wouldn't you ask Ricky the Dragon Steamboat how your match was? Like, or Norman Smiley. I even asked Sonny. You know what I mean? These people make their living doing this. This is their job. You know what I mean? Like, how could you not ask them? Sometimes the shows at the Fun Station, I'm on, like, let's say, like, after intermission, and I know that the talent is gone, but if I'm, like, early in the show and they're still there at intermission, I'll go run up to them really quickly and be like, sir, did you watch my match? Sometimes they say yes, sometimes they say no. And whatever it is that you get from that, you have to take it. You have to take it and you have to apply it, whether it's good, bad, or in between. And that's what I think a lot of people don't do. I don't know if it's because they don't know who the person is or if they weren't alive when they were a wrestler. You know what I mean? I don't know if some 20-year-old kid who just had his third match is going to go up to, like, Demolition or Cowboy Bob Orton and ask them how their match was. But I mean, you bet your ass they should, whether they know who they are or not.
Listen to this guy. He's the man. You don't call him the man for nothing. He's the man. Chris, the man Romano, I appreciate the time that we've had here.
I appreciate
Very
it
informative
as
stuff.
Thank you.
Listen, you're going to listen to this thing. You're going to rewind it. You're going to listen to it from the beginning because it's very, very informative. Honestly, man, good stuff.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And thank you, Warriors of Wrestling.
Of course, Warriors of Wrestling show's coming up. There's November 24th. There's also the 11th anniversary show. Be there. And thank you guys for watching and listening.